Hey there, I'm NPR congressional correspondent Susan Davis, and I'm joined by my friend and colleague, Domenico Montanaro. Hey, Domenico.
Hey, Sue.
So we're here to talk about the electoral map just days before Election Day. I know you've got some rating shifts, so let's start first with President Trump. What are some of the states that have shifted in his direction?
Well, so far we have Arizona, which we've moved from lean Democrat to toss-up. And in Joe Biden's direction, the big one is Texas. We moved Texas from lean Republican to toss-up. This is not something I did lightly, but you just can't ignore the polls. They continue to be close, and you can't ignore early voting. Texas is up to almost 90% of its 2016 turnout just from early voting. That puts President Trump in a bit of a hole. We have Joe Biden at 279 electoral votes with all the states that are leaning in his direction, and President Trump at just 125 electoral votes with all the states leaning in his direction.
What about states like New Hampshire?
Well, New Hampshire, we have actually moving from lean Democratic to likely because the polls continue to grow there, and President Trump is just underwater with his approval rating tremendously there. He has a 58% disapproval rating there. Take a state then like Montana. We have a lot of these Republican states that are moving from likely to lean Republican. Montana is another state where President Trump just even as far as his approval rating goes. There's a competitive Senate race there where the Democrat is doing pretty well. Joe Biden's probably not going to win Montana, but it's a high single-digit race, and it's something to highlight.
Look, New Hampshire, Montana, these are states, all states are important, but they don't have a ton of electoral votes. I am curious about what your thoughts are on some of the states that have bigger prizes. Specifically, I'm thinking about Florida and North Carolina, which we've been focused so much on in the closing days.
Who isn't focused on Florida, right? The campaigns certainly have. They've spent more than $250 million on TV ads in Florida for those 29 electoral votes. So yeah, this has traditionally been one of the closest races, in presidential elections in recent history, and it's likely to go that way again. We've seen lots of early vote. They're headed for probably record turnout, and both sides are really, really pushing to win that over. But it's more key to President Trump. He has to win that state right now. It's still a toss-up state, but he needs that. He needs North Carolina. He needs Pennsylvania. If you were to give Trump all of the states that are in margin of error right now, that are toss-up states, he would be at 259 electoral votes. Joe Biden would be at 259 electoral votes, with Pennsylvania the tipping point state, and that is something that Democrats and Republicans have been talking about since the beginning of this election cycle, that Pennsylvania could be the key state.
Well, it seems fair to say that Biden going into Election Day has the advantages. He has the national polling advantages. He's got polling advantages in some of the key states. But the Trump campaign will say that they just don't believe the polls, that his campaign is going to bring new people, new blood to the electorate, and pollsters are missing it. Do you think that's possible?
It's totally possible. Pollsters will tell you they've made huge adjustments from 2016, the biggest one on education. They didn't see the big gap between whites with college degrees and whites without college degrees, and that gap is even bigger this time, it looks like, according to surveys, and they've really tried to adjust for that, which could make a big difference. The Trump campaign will tell you that they think they can turn out more whites without college degrees because they only turned out at a 58% rate in 2016, but they think that there's more of them to juice to be able to turn out. They'll also tell you that they've done really well registering voters, especially in key states. They've out-registered Democrats by a lot in places like Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Florida.
I don't think we can have this conversation and not remind listeners, viewers, that we may not know the answer to this question on election night for many factors, including the pandemic and how people are voting this year. How patient do you think the country is going to need to be?
Very patient. The waiting is the hardest part, right? As Tom Petty says. The fact is, we just don't know. In 2016, the Associated Press, who we rely on for calls, called the race at 2:29 a.m. So, get your coffee on, stay up late if that's what you want to do, or go to bed and check it out in the morning. I looked back and checked at 3:06 a.m. I wrote a post that said Hillary Clinton might win the popular vote by my back of the envelope math. So, and she clearly did by 3 million votes because of how slowly California can count. So that's going to have big implications, not just for the presidential election, but for a lot of those down ballot races, House races, and Senate races.
And you and I, of course, will both be part of NPR's live election coverage, which you can find on your local NPR station. We'll also be providing all kinds of reporting on NPR.org and, of course, the NPR Politics Podcast. I'm NPR correspondent Susan Davis.
And I'm Domenico Montanaro, senior political editor and correspondent.